Good morning, students. Once again, here one more video for the third model, which is ignition system. Okay, ignition system. You know why ignition system is required in the IC engines, okay, internal combustion engine. So ignition system is essential part for the internal combustion engine. So now directly moving towards the ignition system types. What are the different types of ignition systems? Okay, basically we have two types. uh, First one is the battery or coil ignition system, and second one is the magneto ignition system. Both these conventional ignition systems works on the mutual electromagnetic induction principle. Now first one, directly moving towards battery ignition system. Okay, I will explain this one. Okay, so this is the diagram. This is what it is, schematic diagram of the coil or battery ignition system. So it consists of mainly two coils, two windings, that is primary winding and secondary winding. Ignition switch, ammeter is required here. Battery is very important, so battery is also you are having here, that is 6 to 12 volt battery, and coil is there here, capacitor and contact breaker operating cam. Secondary winding having what is 200 2100 turns of 10 gauge wire. In primary winding, 200 to 300 turns of 20 gauge wire is required here, and distributor contacts, here it is the 20 to 30,000 volt distributor contacts are required here. And now spark plugs. So these are the spark plugs. 4 spark plugs they are provided here, that is 1 2 3 4 spark plugs and a distributor. So this is what it is, the diagram of schematic diagram of coil or battery ignition system. So how it works, okay, I will explain now. The working, when the ignition switch is closed, the engine is cranked. So as soon as the contact breaker closes, the wire contact the low voltage, the current will flow through primary winding, and it is also to be noted that the contact breaker cam opens and closes the circuit 4 times for the 4 cylinder in one revolution. When the contact breaker opens, the magnetic field begins to collapse. Because of this collapsing, the magnetic field current will be induced in the secondary winding and become more turns at about 21,000 turns of secondary. So voltage goes up to 28,000 to 30,000 volt. So like here, this high voltage current is brought to center of the distributor rotor. The distributor rotor rotates and supplies high voltage current to proper spark plug. Depending upon the engine firing order, when the high voltage current jumps the spark plug gaps, it produces the spark and the charge is ignited. Product of combustion expand and produce power. Okay. The function of capacitor is to reduce uh, the arcing at the contact breaker point, and also when the CB opens, the magnetic field in the primary winding begins to collapse. When the magnetic field is collapsing, capacitor gets fully charged and it starts discharging and helps in building up of voltage in secondary winding. Contact breaker, cam and distributor rotor are mounted on the same shaft in a two-stroke cycle engine. These are motored at the same engine speed. In four-stroke cycle engines, they are motored at half the engine speed. Now moving towards the one more ignition system, that is magneto ignition system. So this is the diagram for magneto ignition system. So the diagram is there. Here schematic diagram of magneto ignition system. Here also some important parts are required. So first one is the very important one, is the distributor contact points and distributor rotor, and spark plugs are required here also. Coil is there, cam is required, and capacitor and contact breaker ignition switch. So these are the, and rotating magnet, two pole are shown here. A rotating magnet here you are having, that is north pole, and south pole is shown on here in the figure. So now how it will work in this case. Magneto will produce and supply the required current to the primary winding. In this case, as shown, we can have rotating magneto with fixed coil or rotating coil with fixed magneto for producing supplying current to primary, and remaining arrangement is same as that of battery ignition system. So how the battery ignition system is work similarly, this will be also will work. Okay, here you have the differences between battery ignition system and magneto ignition system, you may observe. Okay, now moving towards electronic ignition system. Okay, electronic ignition system. So here one diagram we have for electronic ignition system. By this we can explain electronic ignition system, that is capacitance discharge ignition system. So this is known as what it is, capacitor discharge ignition system. So here also we have some very important parts, that is battery is required here, ignition switch is there, AC to DC converter, and charging resistance 350 degree volt here it is required, and a tank capacitor or condenser, we can say this one, and charging device, spark plug. Okay, so this is here towards the spark plug. Okay, and now how it will work. Okay, capacitance discharge ignition system are one type of the electronic ignition system. It mainly consists of 6 to 12 volt battery is required here, already I shown, and ignition switch, actually AC to DC it is, to converter, and charging resistance, tank capacitor, silicon controlled rectifier, that is SCR triggering device, step up transformer, spark plug. 6 to 12 volt battery is connected to the AC to DC converter, power circuit through the ignition switch, which is designed to increase the voltage to 250 to 350 volts. This high voltage is used to charge the tank capacitor or condenser. This voltage through the charging resistor, the charging resistance is also so designed that it controls the required current to the SCR. So likewise, what happens, there is a capacitance discharge ignition system will design, and depending upon the engine firing order, whatever the SCR triggering device sends the pulse, then the current flowing through the primary winding is stopped and the magnetic field begins to collapse. This collapsing magnetic field will induce or step up high voltage current in secondary, which while jumping the spark plug gap produces spark and charge of air fuel mixture is ignited. So likewise, uh, what is electromagnetic system works. Okay, so this is what it is. This is the explanation of ignition systems which are used in the IC engine. Thank you.